This board meeting to order. Thank you all for joining us. As we typically do, we'll begin with an invocation. Join with us if you care to, and we'll ask Commissioner Lance Simpson to lead us in that, please.
You join us to bow your head, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you for coming here tonight, allowing us the opportunity to do the county's business and work for the residents of the county and hopefully do your good works and deeds. We ask you to give us the wisdom and the judgment to help us understand and know the needs and the goals of the county and make those decisions accordingly. We ask you to look after all of our first responders, fire and medical, and our armed services. Please protect them, guide them, and keep them safe as they travel home and abroad. We ask these names in Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.
Amen. And if you would, we'd like to call Malcolm Elijah Shepard, from an Eagle Scout from Troop 276 in Indian Trail. Elijah, if you would come up to the podium here and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Elijah, if you'll remain up there at the podium, we want to recognize this young man who has attained his Eagle Scout. That was earned on Monday, June the 12th. He has been a member of Troop 276 since he was 9 years old. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Malcolm's Eagle Scout project was entitled A Scout Lends a Helping Hand. He worked with the Union County Community Shelter in Monroe on his project, which involved repainting the dining area and hallway at the shelter where meals are served, and collecting deodorants, hand towels, and soaps needed by the shelter. Malcolm set a goal to collect 500 deodorants, hand towels, and soaps. He exceeded his goal and presented the shelter with 703 deodorants, 700 hand towels, and 702 soaps. And I now would like to read a letter that I'll ask this board to vote on. It says, Dear Malcolm, it is with great pleasure that the Union County Board of Commissioners recognizes you for having achieved the rank of Eagle Scout. What a wonderful accomplishment. We know that you have spent countless hours working towards your goal, and your hard work and perseverance paid off. As an Eagle Scout, you now have a responsibility to your fellow Scouts and your community to live by example the ideals of Scouting and to use your leadership skills to improve the lives of others. We are very proud of you and thank you for the example that you have set for the youth of our community. We join the Scouts, leaders, committee members of Troop 276 and your family in congratulating you and celebrating your victory. All in favor of presenting this to Malcolm? Aye. Aye. Malcolm, if you'd like to step up here, just come right through that gate right there. Just come right over here, and we'll present this. Excuse me, Commissioners, if you'll join me in shaking this young man's hand. We appreciate you, and as an Eagle Scout, I appreciate your service and look forward to great things from you.
Congratulations, young man.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Great job. Elijah, if you want to stand right here, I think your mom's here. If she wants to take a picture, we'll gladly entertain it. Come on up here, Mom.
Thank you for letting me do my mommy.
Absolutely. Sure, step right up there.
I just think that's so significant. Okay, one more.
Step right up there.
Scout salute. One, Okay. Oh, yeah, you've been ready before.
There it is.
You got it? Okay. Thank you so much.
Please join us in congratulating Malcolm. All right, and that will take us to public hearing CZ 2017-3418, Highway 218 East.
And Mr.
Mr. Matthews?
I'm sorry, we'll give you an overview.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners, Madam Manager. What you have here tonight is a rezoning request, parcel of property near Love Mill Road on Highway 218, a little over 2 acres. Current zoning of the property is RA 40. Adjacent zoning for the property, this is the parcel in question here. Adjacent properties are RA 40 residential agricultural in this area here. B4 zoning on these 2 parcels and this parcel, and LI light industrial zoning on this particular parcel. The property owner actually owns both of these properties, but the request is currently for this property. So, what you have here is a request to rezone this to CZ-B4. The adjacent property is already zoned B4. What the applicant's intent is to put a vehicle repair facility on this property. The site plan actually incorporates the piece that's already zoned B4, as well as this piece here, which is the piece in question for the rezoning. And that is my understanding is the intent is to be able to utilize an existing septic system, which is on the RA 40 piece, for the construction of the new building, the parking, and the facility for the vehicle repair shop. This particular item came to the planning board. There was a lot of discussion about some potential issues from some of the adjacent property owners, traffic being one of them. There were some concerns about environmental issues. The planning board did make some suggested changes to the conditions. One was suggested that the DOT consider a deceleration lane from the property, and the other one was for an environmental impact study to be done to determine if there would be any negative impacts if there were some type of a spill from the property. Again, these are suggested conditions from the planning board. We did speak with NCDOT about the deceleration lane. The district engineer and I spoke about this. He indicated that they would not require a deceleration lane, and therefore it was not necessary. Again, however, certainly the board can consider that, but as far as DOT's perspective goes, the site did not warrant a deceleration lane. As for the environmental impact study, that is, again, something that the board and the applicant will obviously need to discuss. But for DOT, we did actually discuss that with them. There are, I believe, some some adjacent property owners do have some concerns. I think they are here tonight. The applicant is also here. I think he has a little bit of a presentation and some handouts that he would like to give to you. I will withhold our staff recommendation until the end, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time, and if not, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Hudspeth. I live at 4015 Sincerity Road, which is right off 200 here in Monroe. I'm a Union County resident. I'm the owner of Carolina Garage, which is a small automotive repair business currently operating in Lancaster, South Carolina. I'd like to relocate my business to Union County, where me and my fiance live out with 4 kids. I recently purchased 2 adjoining parcels near the intersection of Highway 218 and Love Mill Road, as Brian was showing right there. One of these parcels was zoned B4 and the other one's RA40. I'd like to combine these parcels and ask the Union County Planning Board Department to grant me a conditional rezoning to B4 CZ on there. I'll only have 3 employees. The hours of operation will be from 8 to 5:30 Monday through Friday. I may occasionally reopen on business on Saturdays to do inspections only for in the mornings for people that are working during the week. I already have a site plan proposed and will meet all Union County's building codes requirements. I do have some pamphlets and everything I'd like to pass out if I could for each member, if that's
There's the
okay.
deputy there.
Keith?
Great, thank you. As you can see, we've actually been doing some research and work and everything, and on the back of page 1, which there's a proposed site plan, which is up there. If you will, I can just go by this. Can y'all see this on y'all's screen as well? What I'm talking about? Okay. So the proposed property right here is 218 right here. What we already have is B4 commercial, which is right over here. The building that we're talking about putting is right on the edge of where that property line is, since I bought both parcels on there. We're going to have 2 30-foot driveways right there for in and out, also parking, all that kind of for that. I'll approximately doing a small business note between 8 to 10 cars a day. Nothing big, nothing large or anything like that. I've been doing some research and everything since our last meeting. Brian Hawkins, stormwater engineer, actually on page 2 of the brochure that I got you, has actually wrote us a letter and everything, and looked on it. It says, based on the size of the proposed development, I would anticipate that business would store a small amount of automotive fluids, but not enough to generate a surface runoff in the event of a spill. As long as any stored fluids are kept under a roof or indoors or outside the path of a typical stormwater runoff, the likelihood of a pollutants coming into contact with soil before the facility employees can clean it up should be relatively low. In addition, the high clay content typically found in this soil in this area, which is on the property, will significantly increase the time it takes pollutants to move through the soil, thereby increasing the soil's effectiveness of breaking down the pollutants before reaching a surface water. Also, on the back of that page of the same 2, Union County Soil and Water, we've actually had Alan Aldridge, which is the district director there. We had, per request, I visit the site that your clients is trying to get rezoned southeast of the intersection of Love Mill Road and Highway 218. We have explained to the neighbors have concerns. They've got concerns about the related runoff coming from the site if being converted into an auto repair shop. My opinion, in the proposed using this compliance with local, state, and federal rules and regulations, I see no issues with erosion or runoff causing a major concern. The site is fairly flat with less than 2% average slope. Is within a very small watershed. The third page I've got is from Carol Rushton. He's actually signed it and everything, and it says water mostly sheets off of the property south into the subject property. A diversion ditch on the south property line behind the existing 2-story structure carries a big portion of the water from the open field westward along the ditch and southern property line around the 2-story structure on the west side, then to the ditch of North Carolina Highway 218. The flow of water then runs along the ditch of North Carolina 218 eastward to the concrete culvert which crosses underneath 218. Water enters the subject property from the southeast corner from the property that is covered in the woods. This runoff should be less intense than the open field south of the diversive ditch. The proposed building site can be graded to divert off-site watering around the building and parking site to culvert running off if we have any issues as far as where the building's going to be. I know in our last meeting we had a few issues with a couple of the neighbors that are on the west side of 218, having some property there and worry about runoffs, environmental service. If you have an automotive shop, what kind of containers would the oil be in? And I've got on, let me count these pages. 1, 2, 3, 4. On page 9 and on page 9 and back of page 9, I've got some used oil containers that are actually at my facility right now. They're actually a great example of what we use. We don't use any kind of buckets or anything like that. We always go by specs, but there are used oil containers, as you can see, there and on the back of our used oil and our old oil, which is self-contained. They are provided by us upon the Halco lubricants that we use. Most of our lubricants that we'll be keeping in stock is mainly going to be oil and oil filters. Anything else is going to be actually ordered by wherever the customer wants, whether it's brake fluid, power steering fluid, or air filters, any kind of that nature. So that'll be the biggest thing as far as lubricants and everything, environmental safe on there. But see, there's a couple pictures. Actually, towards the back, we do show a big red container, which is Safety Clean, which is kind of like our parts washer we keep. It's also certified by Safety Clean, which is North Carolina. They come out, they service and everything. One thing I did want to discuss is about if we did have a oil spill or any kind of that nature itself. We have what they call Halco lubricants. Gives us rags and stuff that are actually oil absorbent rags. The biggest thing is automotive makes an oil absorbent, as you can see on this page right here, for any kind of spills. If you change the oil and you got your container up underneath there spill, you always put it down, everything, you know. The I think that's about, as you right here on the next page, it shows the building right here. That's actually my building I have right now. That's kind of what kind of the structure I want to go with on 218. It is a metal building structure with a brick front. My proposed, if it did pass and everything for me to get, would be similar to something like this, very professional. Nothing just put up or anything. Do y'all have any questions for me?
Any questions?
Where's your business in Lancaster?
It's off Highway 200 in Lancaster in the county.
South of Lancaster or back toward Union County?
Actually, it's north of Lancaster pretty much, before in the Great Falls, Kershaw area and everything. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I've been there in business for this going on my 11th year. Yes, sir.
Are you going to maintain that location, or are you relocating your business to?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. I'm going to be moving here, permanently when I'm here, which I am now. I'm actually going to be relocating that here. And like I said, it's going to be a small business. We'll have 3 employees, count myself. Hours, I estimate my cars being coming in, maybe 9 to 12 cars a day at the most. And it's mainly going to be oil changes, brakes. Nothing real heavy or anything like that. No abandoned cars, anything like that will be at my facility. And also as well, I've already planned on putting up a privacy fence, which is a cover fence behind the shop that goes around, that if I do have a car that's overnight, or if I have anything that right there, you can't really see it behind the shop, as far as putting up trees and everything, is going by the Union County specs and what I need to do.
Mr. Rushing?
The land that's already there, that's already zone B4, could that be usable even if this is not rezoned, and you could do pretty much anything in B4 allowed?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Most definitely. I definitely can use that. And for the type of building and the 4-bay garage I was going to use is going to be right at the property line. But yes, sir, I can with a special permit, I think is what Brian said as far as.
Any other questions?
You mentioned 9 to 12 vehicles a day. Where will you store them? You have 11 parking spaces.
Yes, sir. Most of them, when I say 9 to 12 days, there's going to be a waiting room area. There's going to be a few customers waiting room. It's mainly in and out. Anything that's going to be appointment-wise is appointments going to be from them staying there. If they need a brake job that's not going to be done today, I will have parking on the side there, as you can see, along with the handicap, but I will also have some space in the shop where that vehicle will stay there until the until the job's done for the customer to pick up.
And I noticed on one of the comments that the existing buildings needed to be torn down. Is that part of your plans as well?
Yes, sir. So I've got on the building that we've got, we had got a mobile home that was sitting right here. I'm pointing out right over here. It's already tore out. I've already tore it out. Started grading out some of that and everything, just make it look presentable for the time being. The barn right there, that is a barn, and if this proposal does get where we can move further with the action and everything, that barn right there is going to actually be used for files, anything related to the business itself, be right there. So if we have anything that go back, I know taxes required and stuff like that after so many years. So we'll be using that as far as storage.
And just so I understood in response to Commissioner Rushing, the conditional rezoning would not prohibit you from establishing the business at this location. You have the necessary setbacks on the existing D4?
That's correct. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can put, they will allow me to put that a business, automotive business, or something right there. I guess the setbacks are so many feet off the property line as far as on that side, even though I own that, but that's not going to be zoned, it's not commercial right now. So that's why I'm asking for a bigger spot to get it all zoned before commercial.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Matthews, do you have some additional information? Okay, all right, very good. All right. Persons wishing to address the board, Roger Melton. If you come up, state your name and your address.
How are y'all, ladies, gentlemen, and Jerry? My name is Roger Melton. I'm a lifelong resident of the county here. I have been living. Lily, could you come work this little thing here for me while I'm speaking, please? At the top portion of the land here, at the top of the hill where she has got her area right now, that is my driveway, and I own 3401 Highway 218 East, and then I own 3403 Highway 218 East right behind it, and then I live behind that at 3327 Highway 218 East. So I've got 3 properties across from where we're wanting this rezoned. My concern, and I am deadly against, and deadly is a good word for this area right here. At my driveway, that's the top of the hill. At the intersection of 218 and Love Mill Road is the top of the hill. This goes down like this, and that road culvert is at the exact bottom, and where they're wanting to build this thing is the exact bottom. I've seen flooding time after time after time. The water backs up all the way into Mike Henson's, and I've talked to all the families around there. Mike Henson's already having water back up from what's been done where the pond's filled in, where the building's going to be now. And if you go up all the wells, I'm concerned about all the spillage going in through the culvert, which it won't take all the water that comes down now, but then it goes right by my land, 12 acres of pasture, cows drink of, and then right into the river. So that's a concern. But when me and my wife bought, it was a Tarleton place, Cora Tarleton Love. It stayed vacant for about 5 years, and I went through it and spent a lot of money and redid it. Me and my wife was talking about when we finish out our working time, we might just go to the little smaller house that we bought right there, and that'd kind of be our retirement home, which not that far off. But now we're talking about putting an automotive shop across from it. And I know you're going to be able to hear it, and even working on Saturdays. And as a nice portfolio, and he did a good job on presenting it all together, but the main fact is, that's not the place for it. That is a death trap. I've seen numerous, I can't count them on my hand, the deaths I've seen, the wrecks I've seen there. A little girl in the culvert we're talking about got killed. She was 14 years old, walking to the store. down there when Cook's Grill and Grocery was there. And I don't know if they keep the good records or not, but DOT, if you look about the wrecks that's going on there now, we had the meeting down there, and I said, stick around long enough and you'll see a wreck. The first planning board, when we met down at the grill, old auction place, and doggone 30 minutes later, bam, there was another one. Here they come. But at the top of that hill, people top it and they see a straightaway. They stomp it right down the hill. Well, if they're not going to put a turning lane in for these cars to get in there, and already since they put in everything was fine until they put in 485. Now we wait for 25 to 40 cars sometimes to get out of our driveway already. So now you're going to put people turning, if they're going toward Fairview from New Salem, they're going to stop and wait on 25 cars. You're going to have traffic back there, and they put the fire department in at the intersection, which we're fixing to do. You're going to back traffic up to the fire department and stop that, and into the intersection that's already got a problem. So there's just so many things that could go wrong there, and I just wanted to make it a point and bring all this to everyone's attention. And I know, like I said, I've talked to the Heglers, Evan Steve Hegler, and the man across the street, he's got heart trouble, and he said he didn't really like it, but he wasn't, you know, he was kind of neutral on it because he didn't want to get involved. And everyone around that part, I have not found but just one that actually said they wanted it there. And it's not the point of moving the business in. I'm thinking of the safety concerns, the environmental concerns, just everything involved with what's going to happen there. I just I see a lot more troubles involved. I do. I think that road culvert that we're talking about is no way, if that's built up, you might have to build the land up higher than the road itself. It'll have to be tore out and bigger drains put in for the water to go through. Now, when the water goes through, it goes into a big room, a big area about as big as this room, and it seeps down. A lot of the water seeps down, and then about 100 yards back, 100 to 200, it starts popping up as spring heads later on. And them spring heads go around the clock till 8 months of the year. This is really the driest time, but, you know, we've been having the water. So that I have a concern with also. And I believe I said the wells that we have, I still drink out of wells. I've got 3 wells there. I know, as much as he's having to put in this, 3 mechanics and 8 or 10 cars a day ain't going to get you. You're going to have to have that you're going to have it revolved. So I'm just afraid what it'll turn into, and I don't think it's good for the community. I understand growth. Everybody wants growth, but there's better places to do it than there. That's my concern.
Thank you.
Anybody got any questions for me?
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Sure you can. Yeah.
You know, I asked him the question because I've talked to several folks down there, and I actually know that dip you're talking about. I've grown up down there. I'm familiar with everything you're saying. But the fact that he has B4 already on that one lot.
That's where the pond is.
Right. Have they filled the pond in?
Yeah, not long ago, the pond was filled in.
Right. So if it's zone B4 now, and if he can do what he wants to do, see, one thing I'm looking at is with that addition, he's able to extend and have an in and out. Without that, you know,
Well, that in and
it's
out,
worse.
that in and out, I sent some pictures. I believe y'all got some pictures of it that shows the road tile of the in and out, both ones right there. Did y'all get those pictures up there?
Yeah,
We
got
sent them
some
today?
Pictures that he had too. I think he gave us pictures of where it's coming in.
Okay, well, you can see the water there. From road to road, it still overflows. That tile will not take all that water, especially if you go in and build it up. And then you put the building there, and you've got the water that will not absorb where the building's at then. What's the building, 70 by 90? I mean, I'm just trying to think ahead. There's more problems.
What I'm looking at, I don't know that we can stop him from doing a lot of stuff on that land that's already zoned business is what I'm getting.
Oh, right. Well,
Yeah.
that is not my concern. Across from my house that I may be moving into is my concern. I mean, I don't.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir. Next up is Lillian Melamides. All right.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Lillian Melamides. I live at 3339 East Highway 218. I live right behind Roger and Kathy. As I mentioned, my property runs up to Mr. Melton's, directly behind it. The waterways that he was speaking about, they run underneath the proposed site, back through Mr. Melton's property, where his cows graze, and then there is a creek and a stream, ultimately, that it flows down into the bottom of my property, and the creek then runs out to Rocky River. We keep chickens, we have dogs, I keep bees as well, all of which at any given time are either drinking from that creek, or my dog is playing in it. We also have children as well. My kids frequently are playing in that creek. They're following it all the way up to the river, especially, in the summer months. Of course, the threat of potential runoff or pollution as a result is definitely a concern of ours. I know that they had mentioned that they received an okay and that there weren't any issues or concerns, but it's still very concerning knowing that there is a pond, or was a pond, that is sitting on that property that was filled in at some time with unknown substances. In our area, there are various things that it's rumored to have been filled in with. But I don't know if a permit was obtained for it. And I had emailed and also called several individuals within the county to request permit status, and my calls were not returned and my emails were not returned, and I do have record of that. So there's that piece. Certainly also if a building is constructed over there, chances of some sort of catastrophic failure. I'm sure that, they have engineers that they will be investigating that, but that is a true concern that we have. Really my biggest concern is the traffic, just as Mr. Melton mentioned. So, as Commissioner Rushing is aware, in that area, there are hills on either side, and the line of sight is non-existent or very poor. So customers or even workers pulling in and out of the proposed site are going to have a very difficult time. When it rains, if it's during rush hour, if there is any sort of condition, even the fog that we get on, very humid mornings or, cool mornings in the fall, your visibility is non-existent. So the hope was, if this was going to go in, that a deceleration lane would have been recommended, but I'm concerned that that was not. My husband was almost hit on this road this afternoon as I was coming home with my 1.5-year-old daughter in the back seat. I had to stop to make the left turn, and I was also almost rear-ended. So, I mean, it's a dangerous area. We know, we're aware. There are a couple things that I wanted to respond to. So this gentleman mentioned to us when we had the meeting a couple months ago at Crossroads that this was going to be a second business, not to close down the existing and open up a new location. He said that this was going to be a second location. I'm concerned that either he was not being truthful to us, or perhaps he's not being truthful here. Another item of concern is the barn that he was mentioning is not a barn. It is currently rented out to individuals that live there. And I mean, that's what it is. So I don't know why he referred to it as a barn when there are people that are actually living in that space now. He also mentioned that he was not going to be putting cars out there. There have been vehicles listed for sale for at least the last 2 months. There was a red truck that was sitting out there for sale for approximately 7 weeks, right above where our mailboxes sit at the edge of his property line, and now currently there are 2 vehicles sitting down at the bottom as well with for sale signs. I understand it's his land, he can do what he wants, but again, we're concerned that this is just, foretelling what we can expect moving forward. So those are my concerns. Any questions, please let me know.
Thank you.
I have one.
Commissioner?
Have you seen a sign about rezoning?
No. No.
Can I ask you a
I've
question?
not seen a sign, nor were we notified.
Are we required to have a sign there for rezoning?
There should be a sign posted. It doesn't actually say when the rezoning is. It just has the case number and the telephone number for.
Is there a sign?
I have pictures to prove that there's no sign.
Well, he gave us pictures from 8/5, there's no.
Posted. I can't tell you if the sign was removed by anyone, but it was posted.
Do you know about any sign?
Yeah, there was one there before. I don't know if it's there now or anything on there. There was one on that property itself, like totally past the ball house.
Yeah, because as of 8/5, when these pictures that you gave us were made, I don't see a sign. Is it required to stay up until we do our business, or?
Certainly, sir. Again, I can't tell you if someone removed it or not. It was posted.
Okay.
And if the sign was behind the barn, you would not have been able to see it from the road.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Janine Jenkins, it looks like you crossed it out.
I did. Mike wants to speak.
We'll let Mike speak on your behalf.
My name is Mike Harrington. I've owned the property for 25 years. I kind of had it sold to another guy, and he backed out last minute. This guy wanted it. But the pond's been filled up for 25 years. I've owned it for 25 years, and I filled it up the first year, and it was just a scratch pond. It wasn't no nice pond, or I filled it up with a 1-ton dump truck. And when you see the property line at the back, if you go down behind the apartment, there's an 8 by 8 foot. This land is up. It's head high. And I own 15 pieces of property in Piedmont, and I do develop property. But this property here is up high, and if you see behind the apartment, this water, there's a it's probably 6 foot deep, 12 foot wide ditch where the property line's at. And that water runs against that bank, and it goes down. It goes around behind the apartment. I just lived in that apartment for 2 years. This used to be one of my pieces of property. That ditch goes to the road behind, about 70 feet behind that apartment. Goes to the road, and it takes a right, and the state has a ditch that's about 12 foot wide, 6, 8 foot deep, because it's aggravating mow it. And it goes to that drain, so that water don't go up on that property. And the pond wasn't just filled in, it's been filled in at least 20 years. So.
Any questions?
Hear that.
Thank you. Any questions? All right.
Can we ask Brian some questions? still?
Brian will be back up momentarily. And then it looks like you had signed up, but you already spoken, so.
Yes, sir.
Anything else you want to add?
I do want to add one.
All right.
Please. They did address that the residents and everything around there was staying right across the shop. I do want to note right here, this right here is going to be the shop right here. Their house and everything's way over here. And we're over the hill, right over here. That has nowhere near the shop, no noise, nothing like that. There's 1 or 2 houses that are residents right here that they. But I just want to address you guys. They're not like they're living across the street and everything, okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Mr. Matthews?
It didn't come up anyway, so that works out very well. What questions should I answer for you if you have questions specific?
Commissioner?
Thank you. The concerns that I have, well, one concern is that if they wanted to do a used car lot right now, under B4, could they put used cars there and sell used cars on that acre lot?
Used cars, no, sir. That requires a special permit.
What can they do under what they have zoned now?
So currently on this particular piece of property, which is also owned by Mr. Husband, is B4 by right. Under B4 by right, retail sales can go there. Convenience store without gas, you'd actually have to have a special permit for gas, but a convenience store could go there. Bank, office building, what we call commercial offices can go there. So anyone running, say, a business with an office could have that facility there. A special use permit is required for a vehicle repair. service. So one of the reasons why he's actually going through a conditional rezoning is our ordinance actually allows you to go through that process in lieu of a special use permit if you choose to. And that's one of the reasons why he was intending on adding this piece here. So by right, again, barring no other issues, environmental issues that may arise, and I'm not aware of any, he could have a business on this particular piece of property. And there are no standards as far as requiring any environmental impact study. DOT has already indicated they would not require a deceleration lane. I anticipate they would not require anything for that.
Across the street there on the other corner.
Yes, sir. Here on this side here?
Right, it's a tire business. And I'm
That is correct.
familiar with that one. That's on the same thing before?
It is, yes, sir.
Did he have to get a special use to do that?
That was done years ago, so I'm not sure if they had to do it. That was prior to the current UDO. So they may have actually been able to do that by right at the time.
There was a gas station there on the corner years ago. Hasn't had gas since.
Someone in this location here?
Yeah, right there in the corner.
I'm not aware of any gas in that location. I know there's an auction house, I believe, on this
Yes,
site.
was there.
There was.
The tank's still in the ground?
This particular property here, I believe, is owned by the volunteer fire department. I'm sure there's an anticipation at some point in time.
The volunteer fire department, they've got the land right across. Are they going to be coming in and out on 218, or are they going to be?
There's no site plan that we've seen, so I couldn't tell you at this point in time.
Y'all know?
I spoke with New Salem Volunteer Fire Department, and their expectation was to come out from 218 because there's more space. But I don't know ultimately what the plan will be.
Yeah, this one's kind of tough for me because I've talked to a few people about it today. People I respect a lot. I mean, Steve Hagler. I really have a lot of I have a lot of respect for Steve Hagler, and talked to Evan today. I know there are concerns, and there are concerns about traffic, and you've been on that road plenty of times. One concern that I had that they have was the lack of notice, or the lack of a sign.
Yes, sir.
That is a concern. If that sign hasn't been up for whatever reason, maybe we need to figure something out there. The fact that they can do a lot of stuff on that B4 that would still mean traffic in and out, that's not going to solve a lot of the issues that you guys are concerned with. I think with this type of permit, the special, coming in and get conditional use, it really gives us an opportunity to help them make it something. You might not want it, but it could be better than it could be. And this is something opportunity. I would hope that, I think all y'all know each other. You've been in the community, you've been in the community. Maybe work something out and talk about this a little bit more amongst yourselves. And we've done this in the past with a group down in the southern part of the county, and it worked out really good for everybody. I think it could be an asset, and it could also be something different. I mean, that house is currently rented out. It could stay rented out. Then you could complain about who's renting the house, and there's a lot of different issues that could happen here. But I think if y'all would work together, I think y'all are close enough that not.
They built a house out of there.
Yeah, I think y'all can work this out, though. I think. Yeah.
Where is the septic field?
I'd be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure. I don't have that information, but if you pull up the site plan, let's see if it's on the site plan. It may be in this area here. That might be it. I can't really see if it is.
You see where the apartment's at?
Yes,
All right, the tank is right at the corner.
here.
Yep. And then there's 4 lines run back.
Run this way?
That's right. Then the other one is to the right,
Okay.
just about to the other lot, right at the edge.
All right.
In the corner,
Okay, over here.
right here. And your lines go back that way.
Go that way.
Lines are about 50 or 60 foot apart. And they meet one another like this.
So septic tank here, lines this way, septic
Yep.
tank over here, lines going
Right
this
there.
way.
And there's no on-site stormwater, correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Would it be appropriate to put in some type of on-site oil water separator for this use?
Again, that doesn't necessarily get into a stormwater issue that we would regulate. Certainly, if you wanted to make that a condition, we could certainly look into that, but that's not something we typically would regulate.
Are there any monitoring wells on the other properties, like
Not
where
aware
the
of any,
tanks
sir.
are?
Not saying there aren't, I'm just not aware of any.
Where the fuel tanks, did they make them put anything like that in?
For the property that's at the corner, I'm not aware of any. One of the things that, and I'll certainly answer any other questions you have, but currently this is all zoned RA40. The land use plan doesn't necessarily call for this node to be a commercial node, but as you can see, it already is a commercial node. The applicant's request, we explained to him that obviously the plan didn't necessarily show that as being commercial, but at the staff level, we thought that because of the existing commercial zoning and his attempt to actually create a better flow for the property, we felt that that was a reasonable request as far as rezoning the property for commercial. We understand certainly there are some concerns and issues, but the reality here is that this property and this property both have rights to develop as commercial at some point in time. And whatever traffic is on this road will have to be dealt with. And there's really not anything that we can do to actually prevent that. Those are by right standards. I did talk to DOT. They did not believe that a deceleration lane was necessary. Again, that's something the board can consider. And also, as far as environmental impact, we looked at aerial photography back to 2007. We did not see a pond on the property. I do believe one was there at some point in time. It's just our records that we reviewed did not show a pond on the property. It did not raise any red flags for us at that time. As far as the sign goes, absolutely, Commissioner Rushing. I am not sure why it's not visible or seen. It was posted. My staff did confirm to me they posted the sign. However, they don't necessarily go out there on a daily basis and check and see if it's there.
Anybody know why?
So I really can't say why it's not
It's
on the property.
It's just behind the, is it still on the property?
It was at the corner, I had seen it.
Right. I'm not sure why it's been
But it's
removed.
never been there behind the park. It was at this end of the lot.
We're required to put it near the right-of-way, not behind buildings. So we're required to put it somewhere near the right-of-way. And again, you're absolutely right. We need to find a way to make sure that it's there. But unfortunately, I'm not sure why it's not there.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, sir.
All right, that'll take us to informal comments, which does not look like we have anybody signed up. Therefore, we'll move to additions, deletion, and/or adoption of the agenda. Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that we take consent agenda item number 8 and move it to 28A as a part of the DHS presentation.
All right. All right. Any other additions, deletions, and/or adoption?
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
All right, we got a motion to approve. Do you all need something? Before we do that?
I apologize. We're trying to determine whether or not you have to officially close the public hearing.
Oh, well, I can certainly close.
And whether or not we have to indicate when an action, I'm looking at you, Jeff, okay, when you will consider it at some future date, okay.
Very good. Motion, or I'll just close the public hearing, and now we'll move on.
I apologize,
No
Chairman.
worries, thank you. Additions and deletions, we have a motion by Vice Chairman to move number 8 off the consent to number 28A under the discussion on the Health and Human Services building. And we further have a motion by Commissioner Rushing, or Commissioner Simpson, to approve the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. And consent agenda, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent as amended. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. All right. Figure out where I'm at now. And that should take us to item number 24 under fire funding.
Yes, Commissioners, As the board is aware, over the last several years, we have discussed options associated with fire funding, as we are only one of 2 counties presently that still use fire tax / fire fees to fund our volunteer fire departments. There was some discussion, I think informally during the budget last year, that it was not an item that would we bring up at that point in time. However, as your manager, this was placed on there so that I could, if the board requested, get some direction as to whether or not you want us to bring back alternatives. And when I talk about alternatives, whether or not one alternative could be a task force. Another alternative could be we've identified some consultants who do this type of work, bringing in consultants to do that, or have staff go back and look at it. But in order for us to do any type of work and bring it back to you before we officially proceed, we need some direction from you as to this is something that you wish for us to do.
All right, very good. Thoughts, concerns, comments, questions, motion?
Mr. Chairman, I ask that this board determine the process for which we identify this funding, and maybe in line with the process we just looked at with stakeholders.
Okay. Mr. Rushing?
Was that a motion?
Was that a motion?
I didn't make it as a motion, but I eventually will.
You're going to hold that thought, okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right, Commissioner Rushing?
The concern I have, and Commissioner Jerry Simpson and I spent many hours going over this in the past and meeting with this, and one of the things that is really holding this up is going to be probably some municipalities and what they want to do with fire funding and their fire decisions. And do you agree or disagree? Or there's some issues there that probably need to be figured out before we decide what we're going to do with the funding on a countywide basis. So I would say we would wait until we let those municipalities complete their process before we make any decision on moving forward, because the things that we may consider will be different if they choose to fund their own fire department.
During the budget process, I did ask Chief Blythe as to when they anticipated the work that Temby Bridge, Stallings, and Indian Trail was doing as it related to a municipal district, indicating that they thought it would be done by June 30th. I did speak to Chief Blythe on Friday, and he indicated to me that the work had not been completed, and that he was hoping it would be completed in the near future. But I was not given a definitive timetable as to when that would be done.
Well, it's my educated opinion that until they complete that, then anything that we do would just be guessing at. So I would prefer that we wait until they complete that and decide what they want to do before we jump in with a model that may interfere in that or change their plans. I think they've spent considerable resources probably trying to do a study, consultants, things like that. And for us to do anything ahead of that would probably be maybe a waste of time and effort.
Mr. Jerry Simpson?
Since we're on this topic, this may be a good time to bring these comments forward. You know, early on in the history of fire protection services, Union County government relied on volunteer fire departments throughout communities to provide fire protection. As contractual relationships developed between the various departments and the county, a resolution was adopted designed to define the terms and provisions of this relationship. As a part of that resolution, a 7-member commission was created to assist with the resolution's implementation. As a result of new contracts negotiated with the various departments last year, fire departments last year, and the changes resulting from the contract for emergency medical services with CMC Union, many of the items identified in the resolution as the role of the Fire Commission are no longer relevant. Volunteer fire departments are a critical component of public safety, which the Board of Commissioners consider their highest priority. As the county has grown in size and complexity, I think we will agree that public safety encompasses a host of disciplines, not only law enforcement, emergency medical services, and fire protection, but the courts, inspections, and some components of human services as well. In light of our desire to develop a fair and equitable means of funding fire service, in light of our recent discussions concerning emergency communications, and the realization that all aspects of public safety are closely connected, I would like to suggest that we evaluate the need for a means of oversight. In recent weeks, I have discussed with staff and the chair of the Fire Commission the potential for a public safety advisory board. I believe such a board could serve as a sounding board for future public safety decision-making, as well as improve communication between county government and the various stakeholders and departments involved. If it is the pleasure of the board, I would like to add this to a future agenda for discussion and possible implementation.
Vice Chairman?
Yes, I'd like to agree with Commissioner Rushing and Commissioner Simpson. The concern I have is until you set a plan in place to achieve your goal, your chances are greatly reduced to be able to achieve that goal. And we have seen past couple years where we put this off, didn't have a plan, and then come up through the budget cycle. I'd like to see Commissioner Simpson's ideas brought back with a timeline when we can put such a group together to come back and give us some insight into how to fund our fire departments. But we've got to have, if you don't have a project plan to do it, you're not going to accomplish it. Not in the time frames you expect.
Mr. Richard?
There was no expectation, it was expected that it would have been done July 30th or June 30th, the study?
Yes, in order for it to be considered as part of any future budget, we really need that information usually by February or March, because it has to be appropriately vetted. But yes, it would go into effect the next fiscal year, which would be July 1st.
But maybe what I'm getting at is that Henry Griggs, Stallings.
Oh, yes. My understanding is that, yes, they would do it because they haven't contemplated it within their budgets either. Yes, so it would be July 1.
I would just suggest that we wait till they come up with some idea of what they're going to do, because it would, if we came up with any ideas before we knew if they were going to be part of the county system or not, then it would just be, we'd have to go back to the drawing board.
Can we ask them, excuse me? Sure. Can we ask them to come give us an update at our next meeting?
Yeah, probably
What kind of
include your
goals? Is
motion
that
on
something
that.
reasonable?
Well, my intent was we currently have in place a fire commission. It hasn't met in quite some time due to the fact that we were embroiled or engaged in the contractual development with the fire departments. So we need to do one of three things: either put the fire commission back in place under its current resolution and provisions, or we need to expand that to a public safety committee and reestablish goals and objectives and bylaws and et cetera, or we need to do away with the fire commission as it currently exists. That was my intent.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Richard? Simpson?
I think I like both ideas. My concern is not having a timeline. So my suggestion would be we give the fire departments until October 2nd, our first meeting, to come up with their plan on how they want to approach it. And then at that point, we put together, if they don't have a plan, we put together that public advisory committee or safety committee, and we empower that committee to come up with a plan that we will then implement.
Any other comments, questions? I would just say that I personally agree with Commissioner Helms that I think if you don't give a timeline as to when you expect something, I think you can continue down this road forever, which we've seen. I also concur with Commissioner Jerry Simpson that the fire, what do you call them? Commissions. Business is all going along as we had them. I don't remember what they're called, but the fire commission, when you look at what they were outlined to do, a lot of those roles and things that they were assigned to do really are not relevant. So, because this board has always said that public safety is our number one concern, I think there's a lot of merit in something that we do need to explore, even separate from finding out what Stallings and Indian Trail and Hemi Bridge might be doing. So I do think that we should probably address that at a future meeting. If everybody agrees, we'll put that on a future agenda, maybe our next meeting, and we can discuss that. But additionally, I do think that, we need to either invite them to come enlighten us on their time frame or use the timeline outlined by Commissioner Lance Simpson of October, what'd you say, 2nd?
Second, please.
And so I think, I think there's a lot of merit to all the discussion we had. And so with that, I'll ask for a motion of the intended action. Okay, so the motion is what?
4 things.
The motion is that we ask for a report by October 2nd on Hemi Bridge, Stallings, and Indian Trail on their intentions, and that we direct staff to study the committee that Commissioner Jerry Simpson spoke of. And do we need anything else? That's the 2, right? That's the 2 ideas. You got the timeline, October 2nd, and then the staff investigate on what we need to do to create that committee.
Can I make a friendly amendment? That instead of saying they come to us no later than October 2nd,
Yeah.
ideally, the sooner they come to
Right,
us,
yes,
the
yes.
better we can have
If
achieved.
they know ahead of that, then they can anytime come prior to October 2nd.
All right, so the motion is that staff will review the recommendation of Commissioner Simpson, Jerry Simpson, to put together a public safety commission. In addition, we will notify the fire departments that we would like to hear from them on or before October 2nd, any ideas that they have as far as future funding,
That's Hemi Bridge, Stallings, and Indian Trail.
or any other department that may want to weigh in.
Those are-
Because
those are
that's the only ones we know of, I know, but I think it would be best just to open it.
That's true.
If anybody else has some thoughts maybe we haven't heard about, why allow that opportunity. So we're clear on the motion as stated. All in favor, or any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. All right, thank you. And that will take us to item number 25.
Yes, this is a request from the Board of Education regarding a continuing contract between the BOE and Lenovo Financial Services for the lease purchase of laptops. We probably discussed this, and I think we heard from the BOE as it related to this last year during the budget cycle, where they made us aware that versus purchasing the laptops, that they were looking at a lease arrangement. The annual lease payments total $632,285.40, and the entire contract is $3,161,427. The BOE is asking us to approve a resolution that in essence commits the board to future funding of this annual amount because of the fact that the local government commission actually views this as an indebtedness and has to go before them for approval. And my understanding is their next meeting is August 18th, in which the school system is looking to present the item. So they're looking for some indication from our board this evening. Mr. Crook has prepared the resolution.
And I think, as stated with your new agenda item, it is important to note that the approval of the resolution binds the BOC to appropriate sufficient funds in ensuing fiscal years to meet the amounts required to be paid under the contract in those years, quarterly repayments that result in annual payments totaling $632,285.40 over fiscal years 2018 through 2022, over the entire 5-year contract term.
Any questions, comments, concerns, and/or motion?
And not to put Ms. Heintel on the spot, but I know, okay. I know there are BOE representatives here who, if you all have any questions.
Who is it? Hey, Joe, get on up here. Kathy brought you.
Mr. Rushing, you have a question?
Yes. The manager had spoke something about the interest rate on this.
It's
was-
5.141%.
And that's a little bit higher than what we're accustomed to? Or
Than what we would see in our acquisitions.
Any justifications, or is there any other things that would justify the higher interest rate?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, thanks for having me here, Commissioners. Yes, we do have an accidental, basically a warranty for the 5-year period as well. For any accidental damage that may occur, there's accidental damage protection, as well as any, which includes free replacement of the computer. So that is included in this total lease payment.
So will we still charge a $25 fee to the students, or do we still charge a $25 fee? Or would that be taken care of under that?
For the students, yes. This is for the teacher and administrators.
Okay, these are teachers and administrators only.
Yes.
So they'll just be covered under that 5-year warranty?
Correct.
And that's where the extra interest comes in?
It also includes maintenance.
Excuse me,
Maintenance as well.
maintenance as well.
What kind of rate would we typically see on something like this, either Cindy or Jeff?
Probably around 3, 2.
Probably in the 2.5% to 3% range.
Wow.
It's just depends on how you structure the deal.
This is financed through Lenovo?
Lenovo Financial Services, yes.
Was the deal negotiated with the interest rate up front, or was the deal negotiated with the terms of the warranty, and then the interest rate was negotiated with financing after the fact?
So we went out to, I believe it was 10. We entertained, give me 1 second here. We entertained 9 different models from Apple, Lenovo, HP. A panel was created, and we basically put it, I don't want to say under stress, but each member on the panel was able to put it through kind of their normal day-to-day operations to assess how each laptop would hold up. This did come out the clear winner, and it was actually the cheapest one from a bid amount per unit. So from there, we basically made the selection of this is the computer we would go forward with, and from that point, we negotiated the lease terms.
I'm sorry, but would it be appropriate for maybe you to work with county staff to see how we're getting it 2.5% or 3% versus 5% if we can lower that rate before we sign this contract? I mean, I'm just thinking if we could utilize joint resources here and come up with a lower rate and save money. I mean, am I out in left field here? Or
I think
is
the
that
only challenge in doing that, the drawback and latency, we talked a little bit about this when we were reviewing the financing structure of this. If the consideration is the maintenance and the replacement piece, then you're going to pay a premium for that as a wear and tear usage. So it becomes the trade-off. If we were to negotiate the lease or buy it outright, for instance, what we would see is we probably wouldn't have that component, because Lenovo is probably charging, not having spent a lot of time looking at the lease and everything, but if you're getting that premium service, you're paying that premium and that additional 2% for that restoration or that maintenance work that's done on those and the replacement value.
Did their response include the financing? Or you mentioned you went out and negotiated that after you decided Lenovo was the correct supplier?
Right, so we first went out for a bid to purchase. And actually, when we first took our seat on the board, our first meeting, we were presented with a decision to go ahead and sign a purchase agreement. And after reviewing that agreement, we threw it back to the drawing board and asked for a renegotiation. There were a lot of different elements that were factored into that were not necessary for the school district. So we went back out to a full RFP, and I'm sorry, can you tell me your question again? You asked something specifically.
The units themselves from the bid sheet is, so that there's 10 bid sheets, significantly lower than any other bid that we got for per unit on the bids. So not only did the team of teachers and administrators that looked at the units and banged them and tested them and all that stuff think that this was the best unit, it was also the cheapest bid.
Well, and I don't think anyone, at least I'm not questioning
But we
Lenovo's
didn't negotiate the
choice.
piece until after we picked it.
And that's my question. It sounds like
That's what I'm asking.
the interest rate is a negotiable item without having to sacrifice the terms of the agreement. So there may be an opportunity to save on the interest rate without having to renegotiate the terms and the warranty and everything else that you guys have already gone through and determined is appropriate.
Yeah, we could have staff go back and look at that.
If we can save 2 points, that's significant.
Agreed. Commissioner?
Question. Did I hear you say that under this lease agreement, they give you maintenance, plus they give you replacement for ones that are damaged beyond,
Accidental damage
and
protection.
there's no extra charge to that?
That's correct.
Normally, that's not in a lease agreement. I mean, I used to help write lease agreements for Lenovo when it was IBM. So that's an extreme benefit, but I agree with Commissioner Simpson. If we could shave a couple points off, we might be able to cut our overall cost.
Okay.
I agree with Jeff a little bit, though, that some of the financing part of it and the 5% might have a little bit to do with the warranty that we're getting and the maintenance and the accidental damage to it as well. But we can see what we can do.
Well, they can tell us. You know, if that's why it is there, then they ought to be able to tell us, and they shouldn't balk it. You asking the question.
Certainly. So would we be required to come back in front of the commissioners on our next board meeting, or could we, once this is done, approach the commissioners again and try to get this done? We were hoping to have these started for the beginning of the school year, which we know we're already going to be late with. So I'm not trying to pressure. I just want to know kind of what the next step is, if we're having to wait till the next meeting or if we could do something prior to.
Well, I'm of the opinion I at least go ask and see if it can
Absolutely.
be negotiated. If it can't, well, obviously, then if that's your best bid, then that's what we need to move forward with. But I certainly think it bears the question that we need to at least explore the opportunity. If we can lower that rate, I think we should.
Yes, we will absolutely go back and ask. I'm just trying to figure out kind of what that next step
And if you
is.
can just provide us with how that goes, that would be sufficient for me, but I'll leave it up to the board to.
Mr. Chairman, a couple more.
I think their concern may be, is that if the board does not adopt this resolution this evening, then they have missed the August date, and so it pushes them probably into September with the LGC. And I think that may be the concern that they have, is that if the intent was to try and get this done before school began, that it's just moved them potentially another 30 days beyond that.
Yeah, and I'm fine with, approving it as it is, but I just want us to at least explore that.
What if we approve it not to exceed this amount, but have the opportunity, if they can, reduce it?
Yeah, that'd be fine with me.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Commissioner Rushing?
Are the computers that we're replacing, are all of them, or this is just going to be like a yearly refresh of this isn't all the teachers?
It is.
It is?
Yep.
Are we replacing computers that are a year old?
All the teachers and administrators, they're like 6 or 7 years.
Oh, okay, so there's nothing in here that we're replacing, like they bought 6 months ago, and we're just,
No, no.
No, correct.
okay. And there's,
And there's docking stations, I think, in there too, 500 of them for, not for administration.
and at one time, we had a repair agreement with Lenovo, or they were doing some in-house repairs. We're not doing that anymore for student laptops?
Yeah, I don't believe so.
There wasn't
We
an
have our
in-house,
own staff doing that right
Because
now.
I just remember, kids going for months without computers, and they said, well, we're ordering the parts, and the parts are not coming in.
We had, I believe that UCPS has an in-house computer repair shop.
That's correct.
Right.
Lenovo's especially.
And that's what the kids were paid the $25 for?
Right.
Yes.
And now we're moving away from that to more of a.
Let
having
the
them
companies do it.
maintain
Okay,
them.
yeah. I'm good with the, matter of fact, I'll make the motion to ask to go, not to exceed this amount, approve not to exceed this amount, but request that you go back and see if something can be done about the interest rate.
I think I'll have staff do that tomorrow.
Need to be
Counselor?
clear.
I believe that the Board of Education is going to need some clarity as to whether or not the board approves this resolution.
Yes, approve the resolution.
The resolution is specific to the amount to be paid annually and the total amount. So,
Subject to a reduction in,
and I suppose that if that were the case, that they can reduce that, then it could come back to the board for ratification, but they will
Right.
have this approved. Is that your intent?
correct.
But you can always, and anything that you save money on, you always, it comes back, right? Like if you save money on construction or anything. it
But
comes
again,
back.
I think that my understanding is that the Local Government Commission will be looking for resolution from the Board of
Right.
Commissioners on the 18th.
Okay, the motion is to approve the resolution authorizing a continuing contract with the Union County Board of Education, Union County Public Schools, and Lenovo Financial Services for the lease purchase of laptops. That's what we got here.
All right, we got a motion. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right, thank you.
Okay, the next item is a request by Union County Public Schools for budget flexibility. This is associated with upgrades and renovation at Benton Heights Elementary School of the Arts by using $331,813 in unspent funding that was allocated in fiscal year 14 and fiscal year 15. Within your agenda package, they have identified where monies are to be appropriated to as it relates to Benton Heights Elementary, which includes auditorium and green room renovations, upgrade of the sound system in the gym auditorium, replace unit ventilators in auditorium, ADA upgrade door hardware, site improvements, renovations to the auditorium, and ADA upgrades to restrooms. That's money that you have already appropriated through fiscal years 16 and 17. The bid on Benton Heights included the base bid, which was $4.519 million, and then they had some alternates that they are requesting. Alternate 1 was preferred proprietary products. Alternate 5 was the green room renovations. They did negotiate some reductions to the bid, and then additional projects not in the bid was environmental and playground in the amount of $76,000, and soft cost in the amount of $487,383. Resulting in additional costs of $563,383. The difference between the budget and their total cost as they have proposed is $331,813, and they're proposing that that money come from roofing budget for fiscal year 14 of $66,813, and Walter Bickett Elementary School addition from fiscal year 15 of $265,000.
Thank you. Commissioner Rushing?
Motion to approve the Union County Public Schools request for budget flexibility to fund upgrades and renovations at Benton Heights Elementary School of the Arts.
All right, we got a motion and discussion.
I would just like some clarification on the $9.5 million on the roofing budget. Is that allocated in projects that still need to?
That was the amount of the fiscal 14 budget for roofing projects, I believe, the $9.5 million, sorry. In fiscal 14, you allocated allocated $9.5 million, and we have $66,813,000 left.
Okay, not 9.5 million.
Not $9.5 million, no.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yep, no problem.
So does this actually mean you're going to finish Benton Heights?
Yes, this will allow us to build a brand-new auditorium for Benton Heights.
Long overdue.
Very much so.
All right.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
We have a motion. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. All right.
The next item is an overview of Department of Social Services. This item was requested that staff make a presentation regarding the general performance of the division compared to past performances. If I might make a suggestion, Chairman, probably the presentation alone will be 25 to 30 minutes, and then questions on top of that, as you may want to consider a break.
This chairman has been advised that some may need a break, so we'll take a 5-minute recess. All right, we will reconvene our meeting, and we will start up with number 28, and to include item 28A. So,
Actually, it's I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Do you need my,
oh,
item 27?
yeah, the chairman maybe needs his glasses. How about item number 27?
And it'll be Michelle Lancaster, who's making the presentation, who is our assistant manager, as well as the executive director over human services.
All right.
Thank you very much. Now that you're all ready and settled in, I can take my time, right, on all 50 slides that I've got. I do have 50 slides, but it will not take that long, I don't believe. So I actually want to thank Commissioner Simpson for requesting this overview. As I was putting together my notes, I went back to look at how long I had been involved in human services, and I actually became the interim director on August 9th of last year, so almost exactly a year, so good timing. Maybe not by design, but sometimes that's the best way to have good timing. One of the things I would like to do is point out that in the audience tonight we have Janet Payne, our Assistant Human Services Director, Ray Alepa, the DSS Director, Mary Cosbrook, and Earl Ford and Steve Ramsey, who are 3 of our program administrators who are here and can pitch in if we have any hard questions that I'm not able to answer. I plan to cover a lot of information fairly quickly, and I'm happy to take any questions that you have during the presentation, so feel free to stop me. I'm not covering every detail of DSS operations, but I believe that I will provide an overarching comprehensive look at what social services covers in Union County. If there are items that I'm not able to cover tonight that you have follow-up questions on or questions that we're not able to answer, we'll be happy to follow up following the meeting. One of the things that I would like to share with the board, and many of you may be aware of this, but North Carolina actually has a fairly unique social services system when you look at social service systems around the country. We have a federally mandated, state-supervised, county-administered social services program. So that alone probably tells you how complicated social services can be. This means the federal government authorizes and funds the majority of national programs, and the state government provides oversight and support to the programs. It is the local county department that delivers the services and benefits to the residents. This slide just provides you a highlight of the size and scope of DSS from an employee and budgetary perspective. I tried to highlight for you, you'll see the total budget, and then you'll see the revenue column that really shows you that piece around federal, state, county, and then the county dollar breakdown, and then the FTEs per individual unit. Prior to this current budget year, all funds for DSS were budgeted in one singular bucket. So there was no programmatic delineation prior to the FY18 budget. We know that this is a transition year as we've begun to break these funds apart, and so this is our first pass, and you'll probably see some changes for FY19 as we really further delineate this so that we're giving you really accurate numbers on each programmatic piece of DSS. I decided to tackle what I think is the most complex area of DSS, child welfare services, first. This is also an area that I think many of you would agree has undergone the most scrutiny over the last several years. One of the items that I wanted to highlight for you are the number of children that are in the custody of your county DSS department. And for this past month, or I guess it would have been June actually, have 98 children in custody. And you can see that we've been fairly steady over 2017, But you can also see that from 16 to 17, we've seen a fairly significant increase when you think percentage-wise of the children that were taken into custody. On the next slide, you'll see the total number of intake reports that we received through Child Welfare Services, the denied reports out of the total reports, and the accepted reports for assessment and investigation. So these are significant numbers that come in on a monthly basis that somebody has to make a decision based on the rules and regulations that we follow, and that we have to then have staff follow up on to ensure that children are safe in the community. You'll recall that in January of 2014, the county was put under what I'm calling the original performance development plan for child welfare. There were 7 initial key findings and observations, and I'm going to highlight these. I'm not going to go through them in their entire detail, and then I'm going to close up this section to talk about really where we are today, because I think that's the important part of this section. And you can see that the findings were around agency leadership and engaging in performance management and data management, and those things continue to be in progress. We have completed many of the things that were requested from 2014, and we just continue to hone that skill in our supervisors and managers. The second area was in quality assurance and really initiating regular schedules for quality case reviews and establishing a feedback loop and training process. We're continuing to hone that as well. We initiated a QA program, and you'll hear more about that later. The third area was around CPS intake. The things that we completed in this area were initiating the use of a CPS intake report structured tool to ensure that consistent methodology was used with all workers. We also completed and increased our team supervision and QA oversight to ensure the quality work that comes out of DSS. And we're continuing in that work as well. The next area was in timing and thoroughness of CPS assessments. And the piece that is complete off of that original program was initiating the use of a CPS assessment checklist for all of our programs. And you can follow the areas that we're continuing and are in progress. We have initiated recently in May a team staffing model with all of our cases to ensure a standardized operating procedure for how we do our business. We are also continuing to use performance management data and really, and I'll talk a little bit more about this as well, identifying how we should be using data in our management of our CPS cases.
What has changed on the staffing model?
On the staffing model?
You mentioned you had team staffing model as of May of this year. So what's different about the model now versus prior?
Okay. So prior, the typical model was that a supervisor had a one-on-one meeting with the worker for that case. Now they meet 3 days a week, actually, with the supervisors. All of the workers come in and present their cases to the entire team, and they talk through those in a team setting so that they can ensure that things are being met in a timely manner, that they're all getting the feedback of why decisions are made, maybe why they're not made, and learn from each other through that process.
So it's not just a single individual making those decisions?
Correct. It's a team. I've attended one of those half-day sessions. It's we have a lot of young staff and a lot of young supervisors, perhaps not young in age, but young in experience in many cases. And this is, I think, a really good tool for them to really learn from each other. It's very time intensive, but I think they're seeing the rewards to that work at this point. The next area was the outcomes of the Child Protective Service assessments. And one of the things that was required in that initial plan was establishing structured supervision of all cases. And a lot of these things you'll see really tie in together. While, yes, they initiated that structured expectation of supervisors with the worker, as we began to look closer at what we were doing, and particularly the makeup of our staff and where we wanted to strengthen that, we decided that this team staffing model made sense for where we are today as an organization. It may be that over time we know that we will change that. We're already talking about the idea of maybe not every case has to come after you've seen somebody be successful for 6 months, that they only have to bring certain cases that meet a certain risk threshold. A new worker, when they come on, that it's expected that they would continue to attend those meetings, or a worker that perhaps you had problems with, that this is the method that you have to re-engage them so that we're continuing to better those skills. The next area that was identified in the original plan was supervision of frontline staff. Again, we implemented a structured QA tool to measure the social worker's ability to gather the right information and make good decisions. We're continuing those standard operating procedures, particularly for documentation, and I'll touch on that on the next slide a little bit more. We also, in that initial program, had conflict of interest protocols that needed to be instituted, and those were put into place, and we actually have one supervisor who's the point of contact for those cases. In December of 2016, and I think that might have actually triggered this request to some degree because we got some media coverage around this in May of this year, we had a performance development plan visit. We actually have these visits every 6 months, and so you'll see they happen in December and June, and they have since they began. And the three things that were identified in that December PDP were the need to have consistent child and family team meetings. This is a structured requirement of the juvenile courts in North Carolina, that you bring all the parties together that have anything to do with the child that we're dealing with to make decisions as a team. And we had fallen short on some of those requirements, and so we've actually hired somebody whose entire job is to manage that process. And so while we've made that accomplishment, now we just need to make sure that we're actually ensuring that those meetings are happening. So that piece is happening. The piece that the news report actually focused on was number 2 in supervisory oversight, and it was really around documentation and supervision. So we just talked a little bit about supervision. And one of the things that when they pulled 23 cases at this point in time was that we only had documentation in 45.5% of those reviews from the supervisor. And what staff rightly pointed out was that the supervision had taken place. The notes were there, they were handwritten, they were not in the electronic file, and so the state reviewer would not accept those, which I agree with the state reviewer on this. There's kind of a, in my term, in social work, if it's not in the file, it didn't happen. And so in our case, we use an electronic system, and if it's not in the file, it didn't happen. So we learned a lesson on that one, and we have worked hard, and particularly with our team staffing, that's another reason to do that, to ensure that all those notes are in that case file. And in June, when they were here, they pulled 5 cases, and we were 100% compliant. So we are improving that performance.
Are we conducting random audits internally?
We do have random audits internally, yes, and we'll talk some about QA. You'll see those numbers, and I can get you more specifics, but yes, we do. The last item from December was a shared parenting, and this actually goes with that first item, is hiring this facilitator who can manage this process for us. It is ensuring that when a child comes into foster care that we're also including their biological parents in that shared parenting model. It's something that the state requires, and so we put somebody in place to ensure that that's happening on a regular basis. Next steps with child welfare, one of the things that I need to point out to you is that we have a very large vacancy rate in this area. I know you all know that after 2014 we had a huge turnover rate. A lot of people left this area of work with the county, and we've hired new people, and we continue to struggle in this area, really in hiring and retaining staff, good quality, experienced staff. And this is particularly on the investigation side of child welfare. And one of the things that I believe we need to do is we've got to come up with ways to recruit and retain qualified and experienced staff, and we need to do this soon, like now, immediately. We have 18 of our 48 positions that are vacant. Some of these were recently approved in the budget. You approved 2 additional staff for us to be able to create some after hours and weekend workers in child welfare, which I think are very important. But they're probably no more important than actually having bodies in all of these seats where we need child welfare workers. I've been working with Human Resources to identify a few areas that we believe with modifications we could see positive outcomes fairly quickly. Use of paid overtime versus comp time. One of the things that had been implemented was that we did not pay overtime for our child welfare workers. They are compensated with comp time. And currently we kind of have a range of 4 hours to we have an employee that has over 116 hours of comp time. And so one of the things that we're going to implement immediately is we're going to pay out the comp time and we're going to start paying overtime for these workers. And we think that will have a huge benefit to this staff that are required by the nature of their business to work typically more than 40 hours. Another item that I've been working on with Mark Watson in HR is he has made a request, and I've approved this, the hiring of a consultant to focus solely on the sourcing and recruiting of candidates for vacant child welfare positions. It is expected that this will be a 90 to 120-day activity and will move in a much more expeditious manner than utilizing our internal staff and our processes for sourcing and recruiting. This will be a targeted approach to remedy a specific issue. We want to focus on recruiting and retaining experienced, qualified staff. And this means using something called passive recruiting, so people who may not think that they're looking for a job, we want to go after those folks. We want to go after folks who we think we can retain, because that seems to be the big issue. We get people, we keep them for 18 months, and then they move on somewhere else. And so we really want to work to tackle that issue.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a quick question while we're on this? We're talking about the overtime and the comp time. These employees, are they partially paid for by state and federal dollars? Or are they,
Yes.
like, what's the percentage, you know?
It's
Are these one of the 50, 50s, 25?
It varies according to the work that they're doing in child welfare, where we're able to pull down funds. It's not as clean as the 75-25 or the 50-50 that you're thinking from economic services.
Right. So when we pay these folks overtime, they'll still be compensated
Correct.
a percentage from state or federal
Correct.
dollars. When we gave them comp time, we weren't compensated for the comp time. We just lost that person, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you were doing that, because that sounds like a lot better way of doing it, where
Yes.
that person's still working.
And it may not be our forever strategy, but it's definitely, I think, the strategy that will work right now.
And if we're missing 18 employees, that money's already allocated anyway.
And we, with comp time, I mean, I'm sure you can kind of imagine it. We just dig a bigger hole. That person needs to take the time off. We'd like for them to do that in a timely manner. They're out. That's just one more person down, and somebody has to make up that work.
Are the employees happy with that?
I think they will be much happier with being paid for their time,
Right.
the ones that I've heard from.
That sounds reasonable.
Are we unique in the turnover and vacancy rates?
So my answer to that would be that this is a hard area to work in, and it has higher than typical turnover in general, probably in any of the best circumstance. Ours right now, I think, is probably a little high, but we know that nationwide and across the state, these are jobs that are hard to recruit for, and I think you have to get creative. We've heard from some other counties. Buncombe County's doing some creative things. I'm sure there are other people around the country, and really getting this consultant in, I think, to look at what are some other things that we can do that might be attractive to people, that is outside the box thinking for us. I don't think we're that far off, but I would say right now, we're, when I get 3 in a week, I get a little nervous about what's going on.
When they leave us, are they leaving social services as a whole, or are they just going to a different area?
Now, I'm painting with a broad brush, because people leave, for a variety of reasons, but for the most part, they're going to other DSS agencies and neighboring agencies.
So part of the consultant will be to benchmark best practices from the other areas.
Mm-hmm. And it's a good segue into one of the things. I'm hopeful that this change will help us in our recruiting strategy and will provide us some relief. Additionally, we're looking at making modifications to the starting salary for positions in child welfare to be more competitive with surrounding markets, because we have been losing staff to neighboring counties. Potentially changing these starting salaries would keep us within our current pay plan, and we believe would make a big difference in our recruiting efforts. Along with any modification to starting salaries for social workers, we would also make changes to current staff salary to ensure that they keep their relative place in the pay plan, eliminating any compression or leapfrogging issues. As this component of the plan is finalized, I will share with the board the specific details so that you remain informed about any changes that we're making. What I would like to do is work with Mark on these first two components. We're ready to get this consultant started next week, and then after a couple of weeks of her doing some heavier research, then decide if that really is making that market change now really makes sense. Do we really think we'll see the return to make such a significant change in our pay philosophy at this time? The other area of focus, and one that a couple questions were asked about, is with quality assurance and data management. We have been looking at how we use our data for management purposes, and I would tell you that today I think we're pretty limited in that ability and how we use that. We have had some staff visit Buncombe County where they're further ahead in this area, and to gain an understanding of their system and its ability and how we might use something like it or that system. They have offered that to us at no cost, but we need to do some due diligence to see if that really makes sense for us. We're still in the infancy stages in looking at this area, but I think it's one that we definitely have to improve upon it for our decision making and program management purposes. Additionally, I will be making some organizational changes that are necessary to manage this caseload and to manage this piece of our business that's so important. And I'll inform the board when those happen. Any more questions about child welfare? Because I'm going to switch gears. Yes, sir.
Question. The switch from leave time to overtime,
yes,
is that a county policy?
So, Cindy, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I'll address it. During the budget process this year, we did look at our comp time accumulation. When we were going through the recession and budgets were very tight, I did put in a policy that says, you know, if at all possible, we need to use comp time. But there were cases such as in Public Works when we have individuals who are out, you know, all hours of the day and night, and we really have limited crews as to coming in and being able to grant them the time off. So during this budget process, I identified to all of the directors that it was my preference, because I started looking at these comp times building up, that I thought we should be paying these employees for overtime versus using comp time, because I didn't see comp time as continuing to serve this organization well, because we were having to let too many people off and then we were not getting the work done. So when we developed the budget process this year, in those areas that had been using comp time, we did put in additional dollars for overtime.
And I agree with what you're saying. My concern is that we don't need to be flopping back and forth. So how we address, if it's a county policy, I would assume this board would participate in any changes made.
And at this point, I would tell you the only reason we would go back to a comp time philosophy was if we were to hit any kind of downturn and we were having budgetary constraints. Otherwise, I do believe it's appropriate that we pay overtime.
And the policy allows for that. It actually allows the flexibility so that there's no need for a change, and so that's how we're able to do this. It was the preference that we use comp time, but it allowed for us to change and to pay overtime if we needed to. Okay, we're going to move into economic services. It's the next big area, and I'm not going to read all these to you, but you can see on the screen and in your package the service array that encompasses economic services. So this is where you think of food nutrition services, food stamps, Medicaid, and Work First, and subsidized child care, which I will provide you some data on those areas specifically. Economic services every day works to determine the eligibility of individuals for these particular programs. And these are programs that we have to take every application that comes in the door. We're required by federal law. And so if 300 people come in and 100 are the ones that are actually eligible, then we still have to process all 300 applications with only 100 of those being eligible, and we do not have any flexibility in that. So this is a high demand area. This is an area that you'll all recall. This is where you put new positions in the FY17 budget, the 10 additional staff where we were under the gun, particularly in Food and nutrition services, the state was definitely under the gun from the federal government to improve our timeliness standards in that area, and with the addition of staff and some process changes, that group has really made some really great strides in the work that they do. Food and Nutrition Services is a federally mandated program that provides funds to the poor and elderly in an effort to supplement their income. An FNS case has to be recertified every 6 months for continued benefits. Just like applications, the case that is up for a redetermination of benefits has to be recertified, approved, denied, or withdrawn. And the following graphs show you where we are with this particular program. We've had a decrease in recertifications because we've actually dropped from about 10,000 cases to just under 9,000, with those cases representing on average 2.3 individuals. Processing timeliness is really the area where we had been under direction from the state to really improve that performance. I know many of you have heard of the program that the state put in place called NC Fast, or as the people who work there, they would say that it is not fast at all. It actually slowed the process down quite a bit. And you can actually see over time where the numbers hovered in 16 and then got down to a low in July of 17 of 79% timeliness, and then how they've really been able to progressively get those better. This is an area where we had the state come down and do some lean process improvements with our staff, and I have to commend Earl Ford, the program manager in this area, who really worked with his staff and knew that if he came and asked me for staff again, he was not going to get them, but I was going to keep saying, figure out how to do this better, figure out how to do it faster. I think we can do this, and they have really done that. They have really done a remarkable job. This is also an area where the state has included our team from a national level, the USDA has, of best practices, and so we have a team that gets to travel every quarter, learn from others. The USDA pays for this, and to share our experiences. So this group has really done a tremendous job. The next thing that I'm sharing with you is when we look at our case and procedural error rates. This is a test that they come and do a study. They looked at the most recent months. They looked at 5 cases. You can see in last October we had 100% error rate. They pulled 1 case, so there was 1 error in 1 case. So some of this you have to take with a little more detail. And just because there were procedural rates do not mean that the case was out of compliance. For almost every one of these instances, it was that a worker neglected to send out a notice at the proper time, or again, there wasn't something in the file that the reviewer could see. And so while we've had some negative rates, this group has continued to work on that and is doing a much better job, and I think we'll continue to see that improve. Some of the FNS quality control areas, again, I'm not going to read all these for you, but you can see that we have multiple levels of review of the work that they're doing to ensure that they're doing it right and getting people the benefits that they are entitled to. Last June in 2016, we had a corrective action plan that particularly pointed out that we had failed to send some proper notices, to register applications within 3 days of receipt, failed to meet our timeliness standards, which we knew, and some other administrative functions. Our most recent follow-up, however, in May, removed all those corrective actions except for the case file review, which our training team is working to address the case review findings in that particular area. Family and Children's Medicaid is another area in economic services, another federally mandated program. And you can see here that in FY16 we had an average of 25,000 individuals receiving Family and Children's Medicaid, and that number has actually gone up to 26,000. And again, I'm just giving you some of the quantitative pieces of looking at the applications received, the recertifications completed, and then talk about timeliness a little bit. When I just talked about the FNS standards that we went under last year, this is an area, and I mentioned this during the budget when there were some questions asked, where we know that we're getting scrutiny from the state and the feds, just like we had in FNS. They've not come down with hard and fast you've got to do this by this time period, but we know that that's coming. The entire state knows that. And we have timeliness processing standards that I've laid out here for you, 45 days, 90 days. We are one of the lowest scoring counties currently, but we are seeing that improve. Again, we've asked the state to come down and do a lean process. We're utilizing some of our staff that participated in that previously, and we're already starting to see those numbers climb. And just to give you some perspective, the state average on timeliness is 79%. So we're a little bit lower than that, but nobody's knocking it out of the park on this one. And I think our folks are actually getting ahead of this issue, and we will continue to see this climb over the next few months.
So where are we right now?
I wrote down 65%. I think that's about right, 65%. This is an area, too, where the state actually is having a hard time getting a handle on the numbers, which is why I didn't include the number in here. They do something called a report card, or they have in the past. They've actually suspended that because there have been a lot of questions about the validity of the numbers. So we're hoping that they will institute that again in the next 1 to 2 months, and then we'll have a much better idea. Adult Medicaid program provides medical assistance for the elderly and disabled. In FY16, we were served an average of 8,000 individuals. In 17, this has gone up to approximately 9,200. And again, here's just the numbers of the people that we're serving. And you can see some heavy influxes that come in. The state is batching these at certain times of the year, and that causes other issues when they do that for us, and our staff again tries to work closely with them to point out areas where, you know, if we could get that to be a smoother number, it would be a whole lot easier for us to process applications than when they, you know, throw an extra 300 or 400 on us and we still have those timeliness standards to meet. So we'll continue to work on that with the state. And next shows you the recertifications. And again, I think this shows you in FY17 where they're having some problems with numbers because they're not even giving us numbers every month. So they're continuing to work on their system. And once we have that in a better idea of those numbers, I'll be happy to share that with the board. The next program is Work First, and these I'll start going a little quicker through these now. Work First Family Assistance is one of our smallest programs where we assist approximately 200 families with a case payment that comes from a federal block grant. And you can see the numbers of people that we serve. Child Care Subsidy is child care assistance that's provided to low-income families to help them maintain employment. For FY16 and 17, we provided services for an average of 1,000 children or 700 families per month. You can see on this slide gives you just an idea of how the applications look running through that. I added this one because you can see that we had we opened up our waiting list in 2015. We were able to get some folks off the waiting list, and then once that happened, though, over time we've started to build that back up again for people who are in need of that child care subsidy. And we do run a waiting list in that program of a few hundred folks. It's not uncommon. It's a waiting list program around most places around the state. Next, I'm going to move into adult services. Any questions about economic services? Okay. Adult services, you'll see the array of programs here: adult protective services, guardianship, in-home services, in-home aid services. Adult protective services evaluates whether a disabled adult has been abused, neglected, or exploited. So kind of the same as what you see in child welfare investigations. That service is offered also for adults or people who perhaps could be vulnerable, a disabled adult that could be vulnerable to being abused or taken advantage of. And you see that what we're required to do, we have either immediate response or 72-hour response time. And this, you can see our numbers are smaller, which is good. I think we'd all agree that it's a good thing if our numbers are smaller for any of these abuse or neglect situations. And this is an area, again, where we see our numbers stay about the same, and we actually see really good performance in most of our adult areas. Almost all of them are really operating at an extremely high level. And you can see that through the state audit accuracy rates. You see lots of straight lines on these programs because they're at 100% accuracy when they're going through their audits.
Are the adult cases handled the same way as the child cases with a team?
They are not.
Is there a reason why?
They're not as complex. They're not. You're not in a situation where we're taking custody, typically in an unwilling situation, with a lot more players in the child welfare side of things. And what we see in terms of child welfare, not to digress, but you see a lot of behavioral health issues with those children, so you have a lot of behavioral health agencies or involvement in that. You've got schools, school social workers, and so just a much more dynamic team need than you have for adult services. So guardianship is established when an individual is unable to manage their own affairs, and you can see the number of clients there that we've served over the last 2 years. And then again, you can see our state audit ratings from the last audit was 2012. That's why that's the year that's selected, and then the most recent from FY16. Adult special assistance, in-home services. I'm not going to read that to you. You can see exactly what it tells you that it's outlined to do, that particular service around basic necessities for adults. And again, the client served. And then our audit accuracy ratings, where they're really looking at eligibility and the provision of the services, and we've been 100% in FY16. Adult in-home aid services is a service that assists eligible disabled adults to safely remain in their home as long as possible. Again, you can see our clients served. We didn't have a June number when I put this together. And our audit ratings from FY13 and FY16, where they've been consistently doing a really good job. And then we have adult daycare and day health services to provide financial assistance to eligible disabled adults to attend a licensed adult daycare program. And this is for folks who they want to stay in their home. Perhaps they live with a loved one that works outside the home and they need somewhere to go during the day. And if you've ever had the chance to see one of these programs, they're really those folks love those things. They love to get out and do and enjoy the activities that they have during the day. And you can see the numbers here. And it keeps them in a home and keeps them out of an assisted living or other group home setting that might be the only other alternative that they have. And again, that straight line of 100% on our audit findings from 13 and 16. And then we have our adult services Medicaid claiming services to appropriate claims and monitor Medicaid expenditures performed by the county DSS case management system. You can see the numbers served and the audit ratings. The last couple of groups that I just wanted to highlight, because I think they're important to the work that we do. We have a group home that the county actually owns and operates, and that is a little unusual, I would say, but it is a huge asset to the Department of Social Services and the Department of Juvenile Justice, which is who we partner with, that state agency. The shelter care program provides 24-hour crisis stabilization service by taking in the community's most medically unstable and traumatized children. And so these, again, a high behavioral health needs typically for these kids that are hard to place. We're licensed to house 9 children ages 0 to 17 at any time. And you can see who we serve: minors in DSS custody and court-ordered juveniles who are recommended for placement by DJJ into our group home. They work hard to connect the children to local resources and supports, and it really is a cost-effective and frankly, just a better alternative for these kids who might otherwise end up in detention or in a group home. Our staff does a good job in this area, and you can see the number of youth that we've served over the last few years through that home. Quality and training is something that I wanted to hit on again specifically. So this is a relatively new concept for social services. that came into effect around the 2014 child welfare review that happened with the state, and also with economic services, looking at how we train our employees when they come in for the programs that they need to administer that are really complicated programs and take some time. And so I just wanted to give you some numbers. In economic services, Mary's group has trained in training hours, 28,740 training hours since 2015, and that's 45 staff. So that, I think, tells you how intensive that training is. It's 6 months for most of these employees to get them trained and ready to hit the floor and take these cases to alleviate the caseloads that we have in economic services. And then in child welfare, you see the total training hours from December of 16 to June of 17 of 334 hours, with an average training hours almost 16 hours per 21 staff. And so this is an area where we're going to continue to really beef up that. I think you'll continue to hear more about that as we go along.
Is that on average, the 15 hours, is that pretty typical to get a staff member up to speed?
So this, on the child welfare side, it's a good question. So child welfare, it's not utilized the same as economic services. Now, while there is some onboarding, if you will, for new workers, this is more of an intensive. So if you identify an area where somebody needs to work, we're going to work with you specifically on this area. New supervisors, we're going to work on a specific area. So economic services is truly, you're hired, you don't have any experience, you are going to go through a 6-month training period. So they're managed by two different people, two very different needs in those programs.
Is all the training done in-house?
Yes. So that is my last slide. I want to end by stressing that the employees at DSS are hardworking, dedicated individuals. And my focus as the Human Services Director is always going to be on performance improvement and providing outstanding customer service, and how we can continue to focus on performance, quality assurance, training, compliance, and our use of data in our day-to-day management. My biggest focus today is on child welfare, as I pointed out earlier, recruitment, retention of experienced, quality staff, and doing what we need to do to ensure that children are safe, and we're doing what we can for all children and families in Union County. And I'm happy to take any more questions.
Vice Chairman?
I'd like to tell you that, as you're aware, I'm on the DHS board. I have been for about 4 years. And I can tell you, I agree with you wholeheartedly. This is a hard-working group. But one theme I've heard from them for years is we need people to be able to do the work. And I understand Earl's an old military guy, and he does get a lot accomplished with less. But we've done that to the DHS so long, as example by not letting them hire the head count this board authorized. We need to stop that and start fixing so we're not running at 65%. We need to be running, there's no reason we can't run higher, but they can't do it. We don't need managers. What we need is worker bees. And so I challenge you to make that happen. We made some adjustments this year, so we need to follow through.
Absolutely. And I assure you that I will be the first one here asking for positions if I think that that is what we need. And I do think wholeheartedly that with the lean, and we've had the state down here already in Steve's group, identifying staff need was not one of the things that they left telling us that we needed. We need to make process improvements and get the trained staff out on the floor. So we've been able to see that. That is, again, a long process, particularly for the program Steve has the most complex on the medicated side. You've gone to a session with us in Raleigh. They're very complicated. You can't just know what those are off the top of your head. And so I think that group will continue to improve, and I'm open to any ideas and suggestions they have, and I think that I've displayed that in my work there, and I'll continue to do that.
They've done us a great job, but they're not magicians. So we need to help them there.
Well, I appreciate the update, and I appreciate you for the last year kind of taking charge and trying to do everything you can to make these improvements. And everyone who's been involved in that, I appreciate their efforts. While we're not there yet, I think the progress has been made, And the only thing I would ask as a follow-up is, in several of those areas you mentioned in process for
Yes.
fiscal year 18. If you can kind of provide a best estimate on when those will be completed, and hopefully sooner than the end of fiscal year 18. But I think having a date and something we can shoot for rather than a fiscal year would be important.
Okay.
And if we can hit it earlier than the end of the year, even better. But I do thank you for all your efforts in that in the presentation tonight. It's an important part of our community, and it deserves to be taken care of.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Anything further? All right, thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
All right, now we will move to item number 28 to include 28A.
Commissioners, the first item on the agenda is just as requested by the board, an update on Human Services building construction and where we are on that project. Just by way of a little background, the board's obviously seen a lot of this in the past as we were going through the initiation of this project and more for the public. This is the largest single general funded capital project the board has underway and has done in probably the last 20 years. So this is a big project, significant expenditures of funds, and it is a major undertaking. We're talking about a 143,000 square foot building, 3 levels on one side, 2 on the other, a 30-acre parcel, over 400 parking spaces, obviously security access and camera security throughout to secure our employees and our customers. We're staffed up at this time to the facility is sized to bring in the currently projected staff of about 365 people, programmed in about a 13% growth into that number. I actually think we've already staffed up some of these people in the current fiscal year and are above these numbers. So this was the original programming when we built the building. So we've already eaten into some of that 13%. The board will recognize that the site is at the intersection of Concord Avenue and Skyway Drive. This is an aerial before we started construction. The site is laid out in 2 wings on the corner there, with the employee entrance off of 601 Skyway Drive and the public access off of Concord, and is laid out for future expansions at some time in the future into those parking areas, with obviously ample room on that site. We own that entire parcel that's shown there to be able to expand parking into other areas. Some original artist renderings of what this facility is going to look like from the front, off the main entrance, the main entryway, the rear employee entrance off the back. And here's where we are today, the photo on the left being the entrance, the center photo being a close-up of the main entrance onto construction, and the photo on the right being the employee entrance off the back. Work right now is about 75% complete on the building. The 3rd floor is already being drywalled out. The ground floor is starting drywall, ceilings being hung, still some pipe going in and chase work and other things, but the progress is really moving forward. Total project to date in terms of what we've encumbered on what we're planning in terms of our current estimate. The construction contract for the building itself is on $24.4 million. We have over $2 million in professional fees for architectural and engineering services during design and construction. Over $800,000 in the planning and programming to bring us to the construction phase. Spent over $2 million, nearly $3 million on land acquisition and fees associated with the various permitting that we needed to go through to secure the site and secure building permits and other permits. We have some $4.4 million in project support, and FF&E is furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And that $4.4 million, a big part of that is unspent to date. And that number is still being better defined as we get to final specifications now. And that really gets us a little bit into the next item, but I'll give you a preview of that now, anticipating some of what your questions might be. When the building was designed, as we went through the detailed design phase, the intent, working with our architect, was to break out the furniture, fixtures, and equipment and have the county procure those directly. And that was done primarily as a cost-saving measure. If we put that into the contractor's bid amount, one, we lose control over the quality of the product. You can only specify so much detail. We have to keep a competitive bid environment. So we lose some control over quality, and more importantly, you can see markups on that by the supplier, the general contractor, through that process. So the intent was to break those out early on in the phase and break that budget out as a separate line item that the county would undertake. So the part A of this agenda item is demountable wall partitions. Some $500,000. That was always part of the design. These are primarily glass partitions that serve as the front of small offices and even larger offices. And the reason for the glass partition is twofold. One, to bring light into the interior of the building. So if the offices are on exterior walls, that light from those windows comes into the interior building. These partitions are also the doorway. So there are sliding glass panels that actually are the doorway. It's a sliding door on many of these offices and conference rooms. These are also the huddle rooms for the small conference areas, and it is clear glass down most of the way and opaque glass up about 20–30%. So when you're sitting down, you have some degree of privacy, but there's light coming in, and it's also security for these huddle areas and other areas like that our employees are visible. The other items that are in there are all of the furniture, the biggest expense being all of our systems furniture, the modular units that make up the bulk of the area. There is freestanding furniture that will be used in the office areas, in the conference rooms. There is all of the medical equipment that is coming in on this, and that's a number we don't have a good price on yet, which is why that number will probably go up beyond that $4.38 million. So all of that is included. We're in the process right now. We've selected the modular furniture. We have bids out on the street. We are pricing that through, not bids, but we're using state contracts, selected the vendors, worked through that, getting the final pricing on that. Same thing with our furniture, freestanding furniture. We have gone through that same process, did a selection process with staff that will be using the furniture, looked at the best we can get off of state contracts or other contracts of that nature so we could buy direct. And we're going through the final process now of pricing out all the additional medical equipment, and then we still have some miscellaneous. Additional project support services are engineering, soils testing, materials testing, traffic engineering, things that fall outside the architect's typical realm of responsibility. We have to put a traffic light in at the intersection there. That falls into those additional project costs that we are having to account for. So at this point, our total cost is about $34.6 million. We expect that to go up a little bit, still well within the authorized budget for the project. In terms of schedule, we're looking at a December 1 construction completion date. We're looking for furniture installation in the December-January timeframe, IT and audio-video installation in the November-December timeframe, and move in probably in the February timeframe. So we're still working through all the details on these logistics. We have hired a commissioning or are hiring a commissioning agent to take care of all the HVAC, electrical testing and inspection before we move in. We have to get a moving company on board to help us physically move our people there. So all those logistics are being worked through and shooting around this anticipated date of February 2018. We do have a neat little video. Our construction contractor actually does drone flybys on a periodic basis for their benefit and ours to track the progress of the work. So let's see if this works. It worked on my computer. working on this one. So if you want to see the video, go to our website, look at CIP project status page, and there we have all of our capital improvement programs with status updates, and I will make sure that that flyby video is up and working. And I think part of the problem is when I brought it here, this probably isn't set up to grab that video and update it automatically. So with that, happy to answer any questions or comments that the board might have.
Any questions? Vice Chair?
You made the statement that the 34.5, that your 4,382,000 may go up, but it's within your purview. What do you perceive your purview is?
Well,
if it's not 34,
it's within the authorized budget that the board has approved for the project.
What you want to remind me of that?
That's $42 million.
That's kind of a large.
Yes,
large bucket.
This project, the board will remember, came in, we were very fortunate in the bidding environment and came in about $5 million below the architect's and our program manager's estimate. Originally, the board may remember when we were programming this out, the project came in, the project estimates as we got to about 70% complete on the project were way over our budget estimate. And we sent our architect back on their dime to skinny this project down and work with our program manager to really come up with a project we could afford. So the project was trimmed down a good bit. The construction cost estimate at that time, I believe, was about $39 million. Obviously, I'm sorry, $29 million. And the project came in at $24 million. So we saved about close to $5 million in that ballpark, as I remember exactly. So a big part of that surplus is in that bid, the favorable bid environment we had at the time. No, Commissioner, we have no plans on spending $42 million.
And my concern is, we've clearly got some other capital projects that $5 million would almost accomplish. I don't want to see it eroded without proper.
We have been sticking to a very, very tight budget on this. The construction contract, with all the work we've done, we are now 75% complete. We are within the prescribed contingency in that budget, so we have not had to come back to the board for a budget amendment on, because if we're going to spend more money on the contract than is authorized in the contract, we do have to come back to the board to do that. Any other expenditures, as you saw on this other item, have to come back to the board for approval. So you will be seeing, in that $4.4 million estimate we have up there, I'm expecting to exceed that by, I'm not sure how much right now, $500,000 maybe a little more. We don't have firm numbers. Some of the things that were not in that number, again, were the traffic light that we have to put in. We didn't count in that number. The commissioning of the building, a few of the other services. The medical equipment is something that we never really priced early on. We weren't comfortable just what we had to do until we got this far in the process. So we just had a plug number in there, and we're fine-tuning that number right now. But yes, Commissioner, we're not coming in at $38 million or $39 million with this project.
Any other questions? Commissioner Simpson?
What's the funding mechanism on this building again?
It was cash. If you recall, the Board of County Commissioners took the payout we received from the hospital and applied a portion of that to this particular project, because this was your number one building need, based upon when we went through our capital improvement program, oh my gosh, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and this was the number one priority, and so those funds were allocated to this project.
I think that's important to know.
Yes, it is. There was no debt associated with this project.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
We do have the one consent item that you moved to now.
All right. You want to?
We would like to get your approval on it.
Go back to
number 8.
While we're getting that up, I do understand the glass, I guess, a little bit for the light, but but with the sensitivity of stuff, it's not going to affect any, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of sensitive issues in this building. It's not going to have any effect. on those.
The client conference rooms are not these glass rooms. So the glass enclosed huddle rooms are small conference rooms for staff to use. The work areas for our staff are not big. I mean, they're nominal size workstations, so we provided a lot of what's termed now huddle spaces. So 2 and 3 employees need to get together to discuss something, supervisor wants to sit down and go over stuff. We've got a number of those throughout the building to provide that kind of workspace where you can do collaborative work together.
And right now, in the environment we're in, a lot of the clients come back to where the workers are actually within their workspace. That protocol is being changed to where we have general space that they will be meeting clients in, and one of that is for security purposes. So we are changing that arrangement.
So is that 544 included in the 34.6 that you just presented?
That 500, that for this item is included in that
Yes.
4.38 million. Yes,
Yes.
that's part of that number.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we accept the proposal from Alfred Williams Company and authorize the county manager to approve an agreement in the amount of $544,032.21.
All right, we have a motion, any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none.
And forgive me, Board, I neglected to introduce Scott Honeycutt, my Engineering Division Director, who was here to answer all the tough questions if you got to.
We appreciate you all being here. All right, that'll take us to item number 29, appointments to boards and committees.
Sure. Yes, sir. Motion to appoint Ms. Walden, Ms. Elmore to the Adult Care, reappoint to the Adult Care Home Community Advisory Committee, and to appoint Chris Duggan as a member of the South Piedmont Community College Board of Trustees.
All right, we have a motion, any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. And that will take us to the county manager's comments.
And I just have really one comment, and that is to thank Ms. Lancaster for the information that she provided to the board. And I think it gave the board a really good overview of just how complex DSS is, and I'm not sure that without seeing it in that kind of light, you really could appreciate all the things that staff has to deal with over there. So I thought it was very helpful for the board, for the general public, to have that information.
Great, thank you. Mr. Jerry Simpson.
No further comments.
Mr. Rushing.
No comment.
Mr. Lance Simpson.
No further comments.
Vice Chairman Richard Helms.
No comments.
And I have no comments. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none.